It's been 3 years living in a basement at my friend's house, as I lost my family and still haven't been able to get a place of my own yet. But the basement was alright. A lot has changed since when I first moved in, so let me give you some backstory. It's summer, and I worked a hell of a lot. My friend who owned the house was away for work, so I would of course come home, and even though I was allowed to sleep anywhere except their bedroom when they were away, I chose to be respectful and continue sleeping in the basement. On this fine day, which started out with blue skies and all smiles, I got to work in no time to do a small 4-hour shift. I worked retail, a small local shop, which wasn't all too popular if you went online and read the reviews. Till when I arrived, I found out that a few people had called in sick, and I was now working a 10-hour shift. It was a time I was not very impressed with. To add to that, the weather took a turn for the worse, and it started to thunder and lightning. I kind of expected it, as we did have a heatwave for quite a few days. But still, it seemed to correlate with my own mood. At first, the shift dragged. I found myself looping around the store with nothing much to do. Hardly any customers came in, and a delivery had been worked the day before. By the time it got to the end of my shift, I was so bored I even started to read the ingredients of foods I randomly selected, to what little joy it brought. Thankfully, the bell sounded, and a customer came in. I walked back to the till and watched as they came in and walked down one of the aisles furthest away from me. It's where we kept all the refrigerated foods and drinks, so I automatically thought they were going to quickly grab some alcohol and be gone. But of course, that didn't happen. Things just fell silent, and I even got on my toes to see if I could see down that aisle. It was literally closing time, and I wanted nothing more than to go home and sleep. I called out on the voiceover saying that the store was now closing, and it was time to pay for items if they wanted to purchase anything. Thankfully, it worked. The man came over and placed a bottle of water on the counter. It wasn't what I expected, but it was fine. I noticed he was actually quite a rough-looking old gentleman. I wished him a nice night and followed him out as I shut the doors and locked up. I breathed a sigh of relief as I locked everything up and double-checked everything before heading on home. I was very happy and also very tired. My friend had called me to ask how things were and that they were going to be home in the morning. But honestly, I got home, took off my shoes and just slumped down the stairs heading straight for my bed. And then the power knocks off. Luck was not on my side. I grunted, propping myself up onto my elbow and getting back up again. I checked the fuse box in the house and could see nothing was out of the ordinary. So I headed on over to the window and checked to see if neighbours' power had gone out too. But they hadn't. I honestly wasn't sure what to do, as I had never owned a home before, and now I was in darkness. Before I called my friend for advice, I wanted to go and knock on the neighbours to see if they could help in any way. So I put my shoes back on and walked on over in the rain and knocked on my next door neighbours. They were lovely, but I didn't exactly know what to do except to call the electric supplier and report the issue. I got back home, soaked, and searched through the phone book, only to spot the basement door open. Now, I am pretty confident that I did close the door. I always close the door. But it did make me question if I had or hadn't. Knowing I was still in darkness and using my phone as a flashlight, I proceeded to get on the phone to the electric supplier. Eventually, I found a number, and even longer to get through to them. Thankfully, the woman I spoke to was very kind. I said even though the electric had been cut off to the house, and they are coming to fix it, I was advised they would need to speak to the homeowner for future times. I was just glad they were coming to fix it. With not much else to do, and knowing I didn't exactly have to stay up as apparently the problem was outside and not in, I just headed off to bed. I think most people would be pretty scared going down into a basement when it is completely dark. But I felt comfortable. It was my own space after all. I went down and just fell onto my bed, loosely wrapping the blanket over me as I closed my eyes. Now, I'm not sure how long I slept, or how long had passed, but I woke to the sound of breathing right in front of me. It was heavy, like this person had been smoking all their life. It was very rough. I honestly thought I was dreaming for a quick second. I could even feel their breath on my face. But when they pulled away and started walking, I opened my eyes and could faintly see a shadow walking around the basement. Turns out I was not dreaming at all, and someone was actually in my room. Where my bedroom was situated, the stairs was around the corner, so this man went out of sight, and I sat up, carefully getting out of bed. I listened for a little while before standing and creeping over to the corner of the wall and peeking around. He was gone. Must have been searching for valuables upstairs. I could hear their feet walking around from room to room, and they came to an abrupt halt when my phone ran out. I had no idea why, and no idea who it was, but I quickly silenced it before hearing him come to a stop at the top of the stairs. I hid underneath and grabbed some loose wood close by. My heart was in my throat, so I watched as he slowly came down the stairs, stepping heavily, as if he knew I was awake now. I carefully waited as he reached the bottom and walked towards where my bed was. I took this time to quickly run out, hit him over the head with the wood, which snapped on impact, and then ran for it. I have no idea if they were out cold or if they were fine, but I did not look back. I ran out of that house, called for the police, and waited for them to arrive. By the time they had, the man had disappeared into the night. My friend came home the next day, and we set up some cameras on the outside of the house for future times, which made me feel a lot more at ease. I still feel anxious though, knowing he is still out there somewhere. The basement was my games room. Mostly the basement was full of junk, but I had made a small corner specifically for my time. A time when I can escape from the stresses of the world, and I could be as loud as I wanted. On that night, I was playing Battlefield 5. It was one of my favourite games, and could lose so many hours very quickly. On one night, talking to my friends and playing as a sniper, hearing them complain at me for not using a proper gun, I thought I could hear some taps on the windows above. There were some very small windows that were ground level on the outside. It just allowed more light to come into the basement during the day. I looked up and checked them all, as I did have my headset on and couldn't be too sure what I heard. But a few moments later, I was back to playing the game and having more laughs. I looked at the time quickly and could see it was early hours in the morning. I had been playing for over 4 hours now. I was hungry too, but eating early hours in the morning would lead to me having acid reflux, so I chose to now starve myself. Sadly, we lost the game, and I actually sat somewhere towards the bottom of the scoreboard. It was an embarrassing achievement for me. But whilst in the lobby, I always had the music turned off, so this time I knew I heard one of the windows being knocked. I quickly looked up to see a face staring back at me. I jumped in my seat and screamed a little as they looked insane. a crazy smile, and just continued staring at me. What made it worse was when my parents were fast asleep, and I had no idea if the front door or back were locked. I was pretty sure they were, but you can never be too certain. My friends asked what was going on, and I quickly explained the situation before getting up. But when I looked back up to the windows, the face had gone. I picked my headset back up and said some creepy man was glaring at me through one of the small windows. And they all laughed and said it was creepy, and I should probably make sure he was gone. So I ran up the stairs to the door, and as I opened it, I was greeted with the same person, now standing right in front of me. I screamed at the top of my lungs before quickly he put his hands over my face. I have to say, at the time I was only 14. I wriggled and wrestled as much as possible, making it hard for him to take me anywhere. But easily enough, he picked me up and started to run towards the front door, which was now wide open. Not sure what happened next, but I fell over with the man and soon saw my dad with a baseball bat in his hands, hitting the man over and over again until he wasn't able to get back up. He wasn't unconscious, but was very much defeated. I ran to my mum, who sat on the stairs with her arms wide open, crying. My dad quickly called the police, and we waited until they arrived to take the man away. Apparently, from what I was told, he was done for attempted kidnap of a minor, and was put away to jail. I tell you now, nothing scary happens to me, but that night was truly terrifying for me. I have not gone into a basement since, and I am very paranoid about keeping all the doors and windows locked at night, and so should you be.